Jackson, welcome to the podcast. I am so stoked to have you on today and to talk about all the juicy things that everyone wants to hear about.
Me too.
So exciting. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I've been doing well. Thank you for asking.
Yes, yes. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and just share a little bit of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Great. Well, my name is Jackson Hightower. I run a men's sexual wellness business, and we really focus on helping men achieve sort of like positive sexual experiences without using pharmaceutical drugs, and also reframing their intimate experiences with women to allow for more harmony, more balance, less connection to the non-real, and more moving into like the realness of these situations. I've been practicing and studying the erotic arts for 15 or so years.
Mhm.
I've been an athlete my whole life. I've been an entrepreneur. And I started this business 2 years ago with the mission to really um, share a perspective with men that they may not have heard before and make it as relatable and as digestible and as palatable as possible. Um, I would say like I've harnessed both the masculine energy and the feminine energy in myself, and I really focus on sharing the mix and the blend of those with men and obviously a lot of women who follow my content to create, I guess, more like internal harmony,
Yeah,
right? Like we
yeah.
really I really focus on like men are always about like, oh, what do I do here? What do I do here? I'm like, well, what about what are you doing with yourself?
Ooh,
Right. So I
yeah.
focus on that area first as like sexual self sovereignty, right? And like moving away from some of these bad habits that we're faced with that in a very sexualized society,
Yeah.
and moving more towards discipline in those regards and creating better experiences, in the bedroom and also out of the bedroom, because they go hand in hand.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Wow, I love that. I love that, Jackson. So what got you like what sparks your soul on fire when it comes to this work? Like what is it? What was that like transformational moment for you that you were like I like really have to get into this?
So when I was studying it, the moment actually that got me into it was it was actually when I was in college, and I had a really challenging experience with a woman who's a little bit older than
Yeah.
I was. And she sort of like made it clear that I was very unskilled at what I was doing.
Oh, okay.
And you know, when you're a young kid, you want to always be the best. You don't want that type of
Yeah.
comments being directed at you. But I took the note and I realized I was like, wow, maybe I don't know what I'm doing.
Wow.
And that actually there's no fault because we're never taught, right? We don't
Yes.
actually have the training and the teachings, and there's no sex ed in our culture and our society, and we live in a world where sex is repressed, and it is not openly discussed, especially in the Western world, right? The non-Latin Western world.
Right, right.
And so I had this experience and it kind of like stuck with me. I didn't necessarily begin my journey at that point, but a couple years later when I was living in New York, I was 24, 25, I started reading books, and learning about some of these things because I realized I'm a kind of type of guy that wants to be really good at everything.
Yes.
That's just how I am. And
I
so if
love it.
I'm not, I'm like, well, what do I need to do to get there? Right.
Yes.
So it's reading, it's training, it's teaching, and being an athlete your whole life, you're very, discipline was very part and parcel of my existence. I started training martial arts when I was 4 years old,
Wow.
and I did it for like 3 hours or 3.5 hours a day for 4.5 years. And I got a black belt when I was 7.5. And so most people, and I played baseball and I played soccer, so I played all these sports and I had all this discipline. And I said, well, I've trained with masters. I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. Why don't I take some of that training and apply it towards this area?
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Wow, awesome. I love that. Yeah, and you're right. We aren't taught that. Like when you were talking about that, it's like the only thing we're taught is like porn, right? Like how to have sex like based off of like pornographic videos and images, but that's not actual sex. Like that's not what real sex is like,
it's a movie.
It's a movie. Exactly. It's like it's just made up. It's so much
Yeah.
illusion around like what a woman's body is supposed to look like and how a man is supposed to perform and there's just so much I like bullshit around that, and I think it's like your work and men that speak about this, like it's so important for us to talk about that because that's all we really know. You know what I mean? And then like these addictions happen and they ruin the connections that we're in, the relationships that we're in, the relationship to ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
women too. I'm not just saying men are addicted to porn. I'm sure there's women that experience this too, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that this work is super important, and being able to really get in touch with yourself again, and that like that sovereignty that you mentioned, which I love. I'm all about that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that and bringing that up.
You're welcome.
So when it comes to masculinity, because this is
Mhm.
like a term that like everyone is using nowadays, and on social media people are just like 5 ways to be masculine. You know what I mean? And it's like, all right, but what does it really
Weird.
mean? Like, what does masculinity really truly look like to you?
Masculinity is an energy, first of all. It is not a gender or a sex. So that's the first thing to note is that human beings have masculine energy and feminine energy. That's how I, have learned and I sort of like what I align with and what I agree with. To me, masculine energy really is it's structure, it's containers, it's we're the protectors of the world, I would say, right? In terms of our physicality, but also our capacity to work through things. Um, but masculine energy is also linear. It's direct. It's straightforward. It's like what's the quickest point from A to B? And when we talk about masculinity in our culture, I think that you know some of the early teachings that I had from David Data really align. He paints a really good picture of what masculinity, the levels of masculinity, and I really believe that. Right, there's sort of this like first degree, he calls a first level masculine man, right, who is looks masculine, feels masculine, is masculine, but it often comes out as sort of low vibrational masculine, like probably like toxic masculine, where it's alpha, but it's not integrated alpha.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like, and you see these guys who have never really integrated any of their feminine energy in them.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
being a man and not integrating any of your feminine energy, you're going to stay at that level. The second level of his explanation is really like, you know, this bringing the feminine in, right? And feminine energy is it's emotional, it's connected, it's circuitous, it's indirect, it's softer, it's really beautiful energy. It's the energy of creation, it's the energy of compassion, it's the energy of community. And so when you can so I've studied martial arts, right? I've studied the hard masculine arts, right? I've played sports, right? These are sort of like very sort of masculine things you would imagine. But I've also done a lot of the work in the feminine space, right? So it's yoga, it's sensuality, it's dance, it's eroticism, it's tantra, it's all those types of things. And so when those things are integrated,
Right.
there's a really beautiful expression that happens that's incredibly harmonious. And it doesn't mean that you're a woman if you're a guy. It doesn't mean, that's not what it means. It just means that you've included the other yang, right? Yin and yang. We
Yeah.
all have it,
The balance.
right?
Right.
The yin is the feminine, the water, yang is the fire, the masculine. But if you're unbalanced in that regard and you're too young, you don't have the full picture essentially.
Right.
And so, culturally right now, men, we grew up in a culture and a society where our male leadership did not connect incredibly well with their emotional and vulnerable capacity.
For sure.
No fault of their own, just the way
Right.
that it is, right? It's just the way that culture was. And so we had this sort of like Mad Men style culture, and the TV show,
Yeah.
and so now we're moving into this realm where women are in the workforce, and women are developing more of their masculine essence, right, to have jobs and to do things that technically speaking aren't really that feminine.
Yes. Yes.
They're just not. And women are breadwinners and they can support themselves and they're making their own money, which all these things are great.
Right.
But if you look at it, they're not feminine traits and characteristics. And
Mhm.
so, culturally right now, we're at this very interesting inflection point where men are trying to figure out what is healthy masculine energy,
Right.
right? And then the women are developing their masculine, and in actually increasing their masculine essence,
Totally.
creating these shells. We call them like shells of masculinity.
Right.
And so it's a kind of a wild time because the third level masculine, right? So like bring it all together is when the masculine has integrated his low level masculine,
Mm.
he's integrated his feminine essence, and he's elevated into this sort of third level, which is what I consider to be like healthy masculine. And as a man, it means that you're self-invested, right? It means that you focus on your career, your habits, your interests, your curiosities. It means that you protect, your family
Yeah.
and your loved ones and your elders. It just is like, can you be the best person you can be, right? And it stems, that whole it goes across every aspect of your life. But what I consider it to be is like, men are the protectors of the world, and we should be protecting our families, obviously starting with ourselves,
Yeah.
right? And having enough wherewithal to know what that looks and feels like, and then bringing that into our relationships with women and with, children and coworkers and families and external families. So, and society.
Right.
Um, y- y-
Absolutely.
y- you know, um, so yeah, it was kind of a,
Yeah, no, I love that. I
yeah,
love that. Yeah, and I love that, I think we're finally going back into learning how to balance the masculine and the feminine. Like there's a lot of that going around too, where women are also like learning to not be so hyper masculine, and so like
yeah,
competitive and so like, like trampling over men. And it's like, well, fuck men and men are trash and like all these like
yeah.
narratives. It's
There's no need
like
for that.
why?
Yeah,
Like why do we have to compete with one another? Like
exactly.
we both have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's a perfect puzzle piece when we come together. I think that's beautiful. Like if my man is in his power, I'm excited about that. You know what I mean? Like I love
Yeah,
it. Like do your thing, shine bright,
yeah,
and just like a woman that's in her power in her own way, a man should be like, I love that she's like in her essence,
hmm,
in her
yeah,
femininity, and she's glowing, and in her confidence.
exactly,
Like we
exactly.
should be able to do that, we shouldn't be
Mhm.
competing against one another. And I think that's such a downfall that
Yeah,
that we've gone into.
yeah. Men and women are different creatures.
Yeah.
We're not equal in a lot of ways,
No.
right? And inequality doesn't mean better or worse. I don't believe that men have the emotional capacity that women do.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
just don't.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's not how we're not how we're wired and we're made,
Yeah.
and I think that you know that's an inequality that women can emote and get into the depths of their emotional vulnerability and whatnot so much more than men can. Men have physicality and physical strength for the most part, generally speaking, right? And so, there are these things that happen in our society where we conflate ideas and we project ideas, and the reality is a man who's in his healthy masculine, a woman will follow him because that's essentially like the nature of a male female relationship,
Absolutely.
right? And if the man is not doing a good job of following, um you know nowadays the woman sort of steps into that role, right? Where it's like, well, if he's not going to do it, I'm going to do it. So men, we need to get better at like leading in
Yes.
whatever way we know how, but
Yes.
like in a way that embraces the other and brings that person inside of our unit.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a woman the other day who was interested in coaching, and you know, she was just talking about like, well, like when he doesn't lead, I kind of have to step in, and I was like, well, maybe if you just don't,
Yeah.
and just see what happens,
Yeah.
see where he ends up. If he falls flat on his face, he'll probably learn, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
and there's a way to communicate that with him that isn't like, well, I'm just going to do it.
Yes. Exactly.
But it's tricky, every situation is different. It's all contextual, and so.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And just like you said, like a man has to learn to step forward, a woman has to learn to step back a little bit,
Mhm.
like it's a
Yeah.
dance. That's what it is. It's like learning the dance moves, and sometimes you'll step on each other's toes and that's okay,
Hmm.
like that's part of
Yeah.
learning and growing, but allowing each other the space to grow and to like have grace for one another, because we're all learning.
Yeah.
We all have our shadows. Like no one's perfect, we all have our stuff, right? But allowing that person to like allowing the man to step forward when he needs to lead or wants to lead, let him, give him that space to do it.
Yeah.
And
And
the
allow
woman,
him to succeed or to fail
yes,
so that
exactly.
he can learn, and
Yes.
it's like, and then the woman needs to decide, is this a man I want to be with or not?
Thank
And
you.
that's really what it
I mean,
comes down to,
exactly.
you
Thank
know.
you. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because that's the problem is like a woman wants to control and it's like you can't do that. You have to choose, you know, you at that point you need to choose whether or not you want to continue with this man. But you can't change him, you can't fix him, you know, you can't criticize him into changing either. Like that
Yeah,
doesn't work. Um so yeah, I agree, Jackson. Like I love that you brought that up, and you know, I think it's important that we learn about one another, right? That women put in the effort to learn about how men are wired and how they work and you know how they act and vice versa. And only then can we truly have you know beautiful unions
yeah,
that feel fulfilling.
yeah. We speak different languages.
Yes, we do.
Um,
We do.
yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
there a
And
book called like Women Are from Venus, Men Are from
men are from Mars and women are
Yeah.
from Venus.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because if you think that you're in a dynamic where you're, but because you're not talking to a man when you're a man, you're talking to a woman. And
Yes.
so if you don't understand that the way that you communicate in that scenario is much more important than what you're saying,
Right.
it's the way that you're communicating, right? And women need to understand that men need certain types of communication so that information gets across,
Yes.
right? You know,
Yes.
women need to be more direct sometimes
Yes.
because they need to speak more masculine. Men need to be a little bit more indirect and more soft sometimes because they need, if they want to get their point across and be heard, right? It's
Yes.
about being heard.
Yes. Absolutely. Exactly. I was just thinking that too. Like we do communicate in such different ways, and men are such logical communicators, and women are emotional communicators. You know, so learning to do like I remember I forgot where it was. Like I think I saw it on Instagram. It's a funny reel. Like it was a funny skit between a man and a woman, and the woman was like being like overly emotional and like going through five different like roads, and the guy was just like what. He's just like what are you talking about, like I don't even I don't get it, you know. And she's like how do you not get it, I just poured my whole heart out to you, like what do you mean you don't
Yeah,
get it. And
yeah.
it's like
It's a
he was
different
just
system.
it's a different system. It doesn't mean that he doesn't care or doesn't love
Right.
you. It just means that he communicates differently. And it's like you just need to learn to like, you know, get your point across, you know,
Yeah.
as gracefully as you can.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So funny, Jackson. How would you say, what would you suggest for men to like really step into being more vulnerable in a way that's healthy? You know, because
Mm,
I think I see a lot of like there's so many mixed feelings around vulnerability for men because they're like, oh, well, you don't want to be like this wet lettuce, you know, that like, oh, I'm in my feelings and I'm like, you know, crying and, you know, getting overly emotional. But you also don't want to be this rock that doesn't feel, you know, and doesn't
mhm.
like know how to communicate and really get in touch with the feminine. So what would you say are some of your tips?
Well, for men, I would say there is an element of needing and wanting to hold it together for your family,
Yeah.
and that's really important. So there's an opportunity for men to connect with people outside of their family group or
Mhm.
men's groups or kind of like ways to communicate outside of your internal family dynamic, which allow you to be vulnerable
Right.
and to allow those feelings and things to come through so that you can move through them and you can like take action and move forward.
Yeah.
I think that's the first one. Yeah, I mean, it's, if you're a guy and you have a family and you're the one that they look up to,
Yeah.
and you're a basket case all the time and not able to move things forward, that's probably not going to bode all that well for you.
Right.
But finding opportunities to you like get trauma and energy out of your body through physical activity, I think is one.
Right.
B, finding men's groups or support groups or guys that you can actually talk to about this stuff,
Yeah.
that are connected and they're going to be able to support you, or at the very least just listen, right? So you can just get it out.
Yes.
I think for men it's about getting it out. So we need
Right.
to get out the energetic frequencies that we store up through martial arts, through dance, through weightlifting, through running, through whatever it is that your flow state is. So just make sure you're moving and getting the stuff out of your body. And
Yes.
then communicating analytically as well is really important. And then, you know, um, I think that when you can get that stuff out of the way on your own, and then, when you can come to your partner or your girlfriend or whatever that may be, um, being able to just, communicate, be like, this is where I'm at right now,
Right.
and this is what's going on, and it doesn't mean anything,
Yeah.
and I don't want you to have to fix it. I just, I want you to hear where I'm at. This is what I'm going through, and like, let's focus on something together. I think the issue is that when you don't communicate and you leave everything inside, That's the biggest thing for men is like when you keep it in all the time, then that energy, it's stored as traumatic energy in your body.
Yes.
Like this like tight ass concept, and I'm just like totally stoic. Like,
Mm,
sure, it's cool to be stoic, but like that doesn't last all that long, and I don't think it's real. It's not like a
yeah.
real human, experience. You got to let it out somewhere. Um, that may not be in front of your partner, but it's got to be somewhere. And
Yes.
just, and feeling comfortable getting into those modes where you're not in your analytical brain, you're with your partner, and you're doing things that, you can drop in and have deep conversations about your feelings and like what you want, your desires and your goals, and like that's okay. And like the things that, make you scared, the things that, trouble you. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to tackle them. It just means that
Yeah.
you're acknowledging them
Right.
and then saying, okay, like let's move through them together, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, like a team, like a
Yeah.
relationship should work. It is
Yeah.
a team effort. And you're gonna see, each other's dark sides and like the worst parts of each other. But, the point is to be able to like really move together in that flow and to like really try to, work together to get out of whatever emotion or, whatever thing you're going through. So I
Yeah.
love that. Some great tips. And I think that brotherhood aspect is huge for men, like huge. I think, it's underestimated, how important it is to have like a group of men that can really see you and, like you said, like really hear you, because you're not necessarily looking for these men to fix your issues. No one's going to fix anything for you. That's your responsibility. And that's what sovereignty is. But like at least being able to have a group where they can like really hold you in that and just be like, hey bro, like I see you, I get it. I get
Yeah.
what you're going through, or, any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's amazing. Um, the next thing I really want to touch on is porn and porn usage. I think that's huge. You and I talked about this,
Mhm.
on our last call, and how it really like takes over someone's life if we're not careful. And it leads to addiction, and it leads to issues and problems in performance, and also in problems with like your relationship. What are some ways that men can really practice self-control and like sexual mastery? You're good at this, Jackson.
Yeah.
You talk,
So
you're good at this.
someone just asked me like, well, what do I do? I mean, look, the reality is, um, you need to take an inventory of your time and what you're spending your time on. That's where you start. And if you record, there's this exercise where it's like record what you're doing every minute of the day, like in chunks of 30 minutes.
Right.
And then look at that at the end of the day, and then you see where your time is being spent, you know?
Interesting.
So that's like a very simple thing that you can just do to be like, okay, cool, let's take an inventory. What am I doing during the day?
Yeah.
8 hours of work, 8 hours of eating, pleasure, hanging out, whatever, and 8 hours of sleep. Like it's a very easy way to like, set up your life. Um, the second thing is if you're noticing that a lot of your time is being spent on porn, on apps, on OnlyFans, on whatever, you need to acknowledge it, right? As a man, it's like if we're not able to admit, like, hey, I'm addicted to this thing, or hey, I'm spending a lot of time on this thing,
Mm,
how is it helping my life? That's the second aspect is just acknowledgement, right? There's a moment where you're like, I have to hit rock bottom, where I have to realize that this is not helping me. I think a lot of guys don't understand the actual damage that porn causes. I think it's just like, oh, I'm just watching porn,
right. Like
you
no big
know,
deal, I'm
like
just jacking off.
yeah, they don't. And there's a lot of studies that have come out, in the recent years about the damage it has on your brain, on your hormones, on erectile dysfunction, on all these different things. And so after you take the inventory and you look at yourself and it's like, okay, I may have a problem, you're probably maybe feeling, physical experiences, right? Where like you may not have the vitality, you may be avoiding friendships, relationships, and intimacy issues with partners, not going out and trying to meet new women because you have ED, because you're watching porn,
Yeah.
not having the energy to go out because you're just, ejaculating 3 or 4 times a day and you're just lost all your life force.
Right.
Um, there needs to be a moment where you recognize that quitting this thing is the most important task in your life.
Yes.
If you don't hit that point, you're never going to stop
No.
because no one can really stop except you.
Yes.
People ask me like, how do you stop? How do you stop? I'm like, dude, just stop. Like you need to not watch it, and that's setting up things on your phone, or doing this, or every time you're feeling low or need that dopamine hit, because that's what porn does.
Mm,
It fulfills a dopamine hit,
right.
a
Right.
big one. right?
Huge. Yeah. Huge.
So it's like you're low, you're depressed, you're hungover, you're feeling this, you're feeling that. You move into those realms where like, where can I get dopamine fast?
Yes.
And porn, because of the visceral nature and the hardcore nature of most porn, you get it fast, you get it quick, and you get this major boost.
Yes. Exactly.
So the third aspect is like, what are you willing to do in your life, creating some discipline around not doing that and setting yourself up for success, whether that's sharing with other people, creating a support group, whether that's doing physical activity, jumping in a cold shower, putting ice cubes on your balls. I don't know. Like do something that's going to give you a little bit of a hit of like, woo,
Yes.
that's going to take your mind off of that thing.
Right.
And, for guys who have real serious problems, I recommend 90 days, like no porn, no nothing, no masturbation. Like you got to cut that energy.
Yes.
I don't recommend that for all people, but some people, I do. And, like as men, how we do one thing is really how we do everything, right? So if you
Mm.
don't have discipline in your life in some aspect, in this aspect, what other areas of your life do you have leaky discipline?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's about acknowledgement and recognizing it because porn is a secret addiction. It's a silent
Yes.
addiction and it's a secret addiction.
Yes.
You can't really tell unless you're having sex with a guy that watches porn, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what women share with me. They're like, I know when a guy watches porn, I know when he
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I can tell, when a guy watches porn,
Yeah,
when I'm talking to a guy and he's like, there's like an energy. There's an energy behind it, an
yeah,
energy doesn't lie, right? It speaks
yeah.
volumes. So we know when a man is like addicted to something or there's like something going on behind the scenes that he's not talking about or saying. So yeah, I agree. And I also want to talk about like the boundary aspect and how important it is to be able to know your boundaries because that's the only way you can actually stop an addiction.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to take the inventory and look at yourself. It's deep work,
It is.
right? It's like it's
Yes.
really it's a guy looking at his life and saying, where am I not leveling up to the highest level I can be? If
Yes.
you're not there yet as a man, then you're never going to move past it. If you
Totally.
are there, it's great. But at the end of the day, you're always going to be able to go on your phone and search for something or go on your computer and search for something, no matter what anyone says that they can do. I can make you stop watching porn. It's not true. You have to do it yourself.
Yes. Nobody
You
could
know?
nobody could force you. Like your
Yeah.
partner can't force you, like friends can't force you to stop. Like you really need to take responsibility for
Yeah.
your own habits and your own addictions and all that. And yeah, I like that you mentioned that it's not easy work. I think it's easy to say, yeah, well, we can just like, stop it. But if it's an addiction and it's something that you've done for so long and it's what like the withdrawals must be insane.
Yeah.
It is like a drug. It's
It's hard.
yeah, it's hard. And
Hmm.
it's like you're going to have to take it slow. You may fall and stumble, but you could still get up and you can keep going. Right. And I think it's important to remember that because I'm sure men like they try and then they fail. And then they're like, well, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep doing it. Like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep up with that. Like No Nut November. A lot of men like try to participate in that. And they're like, no, I did it
Hmm.
for a day and I couldn't. But yeah, like it's important that we really get in touch with our own boundaries and we understand our own limitations and how what are some ways that we can actually stop these addictions,
Hmm.
stop ourselves from doing things that we know in the end are not going to be beneficial to our well-being.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really good stuff, really good stuff.
Go put an ice pack on your balls and see if you want to masturbate. That's an easy one.
That's an easy one. That's actually not a bad idea. Like
No, you just have to train yourself, right? It's about dehabituating, right? And if you train yourself to do something, you can untrain yourself to do something.
yes, yes,
But it just
absolutely.
takes a hell of a lot of discipline.
Yes, exactly. It takes discipline. It takes desire too to want to be a better person. That's another part. Because if you really don't want to be a better man, you don't want to level up, then I mean, then
Yeah,
you won't,
you're never gonna get there. You're never gonna
Right.
get there. There's no point. There's no incentive.
Yes,
You
exactly. There's
know?
no incentive. So you have to
Yeah,
be willing, you have to have that desire to be like, I'm sick of my own shit. Basically. I'm done.
yeah,
I'm done doing the same stuff. I want to be more powerful. I want to be more whatever. You know what I mean? I want to be more in tune with myself and I want to have
yeah,
healthier relationships. Like you have to want it. And
yeah,
that goes for anyone and anything in life. You just have to want it.
yeah, yeah. And on that point, you know, yeah, no, you said it. You got it. That's good.
You're like, let me see. No, we got it.
We're good.
That was great. That was so good, Jackson. You nailed it. I mean, your content like on Instagram, like I remember when I first came across your one, I think it was like one of your reels, I was just like, yes, thank you. Like we need more of this. We need more of this content. We need more
Yeah.
women speaking up about this and actually doing the work, and embodying that. Because it's one thing to talk about it and it's another to like actually do it, and
Hmm.
like show like living proof, like I've done this and I've experienced this and I'm at a point where I'm not perfect and that's not the point of this, but like at least I'm comfortable with who I am and I'm comfortable enough to help others, be who they came here to be and like really reach their power and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that, Jackson. Thank you
You're so welcome. Thank you
for
for
your
acknowledging that.
knowledge.
Appreciate it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for your knowledge and for your light. And I'm super excited to put this episode out there.
Great.
But before we go, is there anything else that you want to share? Anything else on your heart, or anything that came up for you?
Um, yeah, I mean, you know, I guess like so your followers are mostly, would you say mostly women?
Yeah, mostly women. I mean,
So,
I have a good amount of men too, and I've worked with men before and stuff.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found is like a consistent theme, this is more like a sort of a tip for women, is they ask me a lot about how do you approach a man about sensitive topics and,
Hmm.
erectile dysfunction or watching porn
Yes.
or this or that. And, the what I've put together is really just sort of like, look, number one, you need to speak to a man when he's not in a work mode. Number one. Number two, you need to speak with him when he's relaxed and calm and chill, and hopefully not on like drinking or whatever it is, right? Number three, there needs to be an approach of like team, us, our, like welcoming, enveloping, compassion, right? And not like accusatory and like, oh, well, you're doing this and you're doing this. It's more
Hmm.
about how can we work through this together. Men are incredibly sensitive as it relates to their sexual energy, their sexual capacities, and their skills. No matter who you are, right? It's just like something you're like, oh, like, am I not doing well, or you don't think I'm good, or and then you go into this whole thing in your head, like as a
Yes.
guy.
Rabbit hole
So
security.
yeah, being really compassionate, really kind, and approaching it as a team-oriented activity, and that you care, and that you're there, and that you're present. You're not going anywhere, but you want to work on this together. That is the best approach. It may not work all the time, but that's sort of the best way to go about this stuff. Is to stroke the ego, like let guys know that you're there, that you are passionate, compassionate, and that you're you know with them, and you want to be with them, and also like let's work on this together.
Yeah.
I think that can be really helpful as sort of just like a tip for women that I found is to really a lot of good feedback from that.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. And to like really mean it, to really make it come.
Well, yeah, it has to be genuine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, to really like be like, no, I love this man and I want to support him and I genuinely see that potential in him and I know that he can reach that. And I want to be his cheerleader, like that's
Yeah.
what it means to be a partner. To me at least, that's what it means to be a girlfriend. It's like you want to cheer your partner on. You want to like be his number one fan. You know what I mean? And like really support him in whatever it is that he
Hmm.
chooses to do with his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. Amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that tip. I think a lot of women are going to find that really helpful. Especially because sometimes we get caught up in that critical aspect of like, he's not doing this and, he's
Yeah.
doing that instead. And I don't like this and I don't like that. And, rather than, coming from a place of criticism, it's so much better to come from a place of compassion, right? And to like still admit that something's bothering you. I'm not saying,
Yeah.
don't admit that, but learn to communicate it in a way where it's compassionate rather than like, you did this and you're doing this and I'm placing all the blame on you, right?
Yeah. That's not going to work out
No.
well.
That never works out.
No. No.
That never works out. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jackson. That was
Yeah.
awesome. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you and work with you? And if you have any like offers or any cool things that you're working on, you can totally share it here.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So my website is naturaljackson.com. And you can find the supplements that I offer there, mostly for men. And that's where you can find the coaching and also like the digital courses. All that's on the website. And then the social media is where I offer all the free content and ideas and content and things that I share there. And that's at Get Natural Jackson. But I'm launching a group coaching for men, group
Cool.
coaching for women soon, and so
Yeah.
we'll be sharing a lot of that on social media. We'll share that, and then people will be able to like send in their information and whatnot. And yeah, but it's so exciting that yeah, I'm glad that you invited me to be on. We had a great, love the vibe of the conversation, and so I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Jackson. I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on too. And we'll definitely have to do a part two for
Oh, I
sure.
love that.
That'd be really cool for us to flow again. I love the flow. And again, all your information just resonates deeply with me. And I'm just like, yes, 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 yes. Check, 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 check. And yeah,
Good. I'm
don't
glad.
forget to put ice on your balls to anyone that's listening to me.
uh, Absolutely.
Most important tip. Like that's like the thing that this episode. So good, Jackson. Thank you. And we
Thank
will
you,
definitely
Yasmin.
chat again soon.
Perfect. Thank
Bye.
you so much. Bye.